Ambient occlusion is very important when you want to have more realism in your renders. What happens is the lights are looking at objects that are occluded by something. For example, the area under the chin is blocking the light, so it's occluded. So it would add more shadow in this region. Areas that are more exposed to the light will have less shadow. Ambient occlusion is really useful for things that have a lot of crevices, like a tree trunk, or a person with a lot of wrinkles, or even an alien character that has a lot of scales or bumps on its body. Now, I'm going to show you two renders here. This is Ryan in his superhero pose without the AO, or ambient occlusion, and here's another render with the ambient occlusion. Now, the differences are extremely subtle in this case, but you'll notice over here, without the ambient occlusion, we have a lot lighter render. But since the chin is blocking the light, notice how much darker it is here. We get a stronger sense of contrast. We even have more definition in the eyes and in the ears. So let's go ahead and set that up inside of Poser. Now we have two techniques that we can use. The easy way and the harder way. Neither one's really hard, actually. The first way is to select our light. For example, I'll choose light number 1. Now on this light's properties, which is next to the parameters tab, I can enable ambient occlusion myself. At this point, I can enter a strength so that I can get more and more darkness in the crevices. I can also check my scene AO and enable a max distance, a bias, and a number of samples. Of course, the more samples you have, the better the result, but also the longer the render time. I'm going to turn this off. Now what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go to the material room and show you an easier way to do this. I can go to my macros here, and I can choose to set up ambient occlusion. And it's going to tell me ambient occlusion was set up on light 1, the one I chose. How cool is that? Click OK. And then all I have to do is go back to my pose room, go to render, and just make sure that we have a nice decent medium setting or more to render this effect. Now once again, it's going to take a little while, so I'll just go ahead and quickly render this. With ambient occlusion, which is also known as AO, it's going to really take its time and look at the scene and evaluate where lights are hitting polygons and where lights are having a more difficult time getting to polygons. Once again, in areas that have some kind of recess. So this is a really great technique, and it's used more and more in 3D. It's also called a dirt map because it is going to focus on areas that the light is not hitting, which would be where dirt would actually settle in real life. So if you spend some time with 3D forums and you look at how people render their objects, you'll see that AO, or ambient occlusion, is used pretty much by everybody. It's a great way to get more realism in your renders.